Hello, my name is Greg Lehman. My guest today on Moonbeams is Kelli Russell Agodon. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we'll just jump right into it. Kelli, what is most exciting to you about poetry at the moment?
Just besides poetry being poetry, because it always excites me, I would say people sharing it that aren't poets. For a long time we were kind of our own, little thing, our little niche, and nobody shared poetry. And now with the internet and like the social media, like I've had my poems, lines from my poems shared with artwork or on Instagram, and people share poems, when sad things happen in the world and when good things happen or when something moves them. So I don't know. I just love that about poetry right now is that it's open to everyone. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, one of the best, social media is certainly, a double-edged sword, for very serious reasons. But
Right.
for one of the best things it brings to the table is just the absence of gatekeepers. Like everybody can share anything, and there's so much more transparency around poetry for sure and encouragement. I do have to ask, how you mentioned like your own work being shared around. Where does Queen Me rank in there? Like in terms of
Queen Me, that one goes around during when there's a woman president candidate. Queen Me will go out into the world. The one that got really shared is a poem called Alexa, Why Am I Falling Apart? That I think a lot of people really resonated with. And that's from my next book, Accidental Devotions, which deals with technology. But people really, responded to having Alexa in their lives now. I mean, the technology, just like the words we say, like when someone says to you, now I didn't like your vacation, like we know what that means. Like 30 years from ago, we wouldn't have known if somebody said, I didn't like your vacation. I mean, like as you didn't respond to my vacation on social media. So I'm interested in all of that.
it's an interesting time, and I also go back to another interview of yours where like, anxiety shows itself in different anxiety is always with us. There's always concerns, and there's certain themes that do stay like money or, whatever. Um, but we do, back in the day there were, concerns around outdated technology. Now we have new technology that brings its own anxieties and is worth expressing in poetry or however, people come upon like different ways of expressing it. And poetry is certainly a growing field for that, I feel like.
Yeah, and some people, I didn't know that people did this, but people like will take voice memos of themselves reciting their own poems in the car or lines or using their notes. So technology, I still use like a journal. Like I carry like a journal in my purse. I haven't figured out how to use my phone for poetry, and I don't think I want to. But I do like that technology is kind of all around us. And when I can kind of get it into our poems, I like it. And I like that people use technology to share poems. Even how many poems I get every morning in my email of poem of the day. I probably have like 20 poems of the day, and I love that.
That's great. I mean, and also opening your email to poetry over other stuff. Just mounds of poetry meeting you instead of like Zoom meetings or anything like that, it sounds lovely.
Right. Well, and like we've gotten into, I'm going to say we, but it's me. You get into a habit where you're like, the first thing you pick up is your phone and you check email or the news. And those are two things. One gives you a bunch to do, and one just hurts your feelings. So, I would just say, read your poems first. Or keep a book of poems on your coffee table so when you have your coffee, you have something to read. I do that too.
I love that. I love that. And then yeah, I'll get to the other questions in a second, but just if I could pull a thread on how you write notes as they come to you. So you'll stop what you're doing, you'll take out a journal and just handwrite, like no audio notes, no nothing.
No, I will do that. And if I do not have a journal, I've only done it, I put notes in my phone and then I forget that I do that. So that's just like throwing it into a black hole. But yes, I will stop whatever I'm doing. Or the other thing I do is I'll just keep reciting because a lot of times poems come to me when I'm paddleboarding and I don't have my journal out there. And so if a line comes to me while I'm paddleboarding, I just keep saying the line over and over and over again till I'm home, and then I run in the house and write it down because I don't trust myself to remember anything.
That's a good rule to have too. But I'll just add that. So I'm a runner, and I have my phone with me, so I do audio notes. But if I'm in a workout or in a space where like I'm not breathing well enough to
Mhm.
recite the line, I'll do the same thing. I'll just repeat the line, and that does polish it a little bit too, where it's like you do a little bit of editing, hopefully.
Right, because you can hear the music and you can hear like when you say something over and over again, you hear the clunky parts.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
100%. Cool. Well, next question. So which poets were most impactful in getting you to become a poet?
So I thought about this and there's always the Emily Dickinson, which she appears in my next book quite a bit and has appeared in previous books. I feel like haunted by her and Plath. But it was actually a poet from the Seattle area named Paula Jones Gardiner. I was in my 20s and I was working this like really it's a corporate job. I mean, I was like I was very much in the honeymoon period with it when I first got it. Like I got my real job. I have an office, I have an expense report. And then as the years went by, I started like I'm not writing poetry. I don't really like my job or my life or the way I'm working so many hours. So I joined a writing group in Seattle. It was just called Women Poets, and I would meet once a month with her. And I wanted to quit my corporate job and move across the water from Seattle across Puget Sound to this like tiny town of like 1,900 people and because it was cheaper and live in a small house and write poetry. And I told her, I said, I I'm afraid. I go, I can't afford to quit my job and move to a small town to write poetry. And she looked at me and she said, you can't afford not to. And that was like the one sentence that totally rerouted my life. I quit my corporate job. I did commute for like 3 months by ferry to there. But yeah, I quit and started to make my life as a poet. And it's been a big, huge side hustle since.
A side hustle. No, that's tremendous. Yeah. She gave you the keys to make it your life. That's beautiful.
Right. And I don't know if she was a poet herself and she was also an art therapist. And I don't know if somebody else would say that because, they're like, you have a well-paying job with a secure in quotes, income, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. So it felt really scary. And I totally understand what golden handcuffs are, why people don't jump into what they're really passionate about. And I just started saying, leap and the net shall appear. And that was since then, that's kind of just how I've lived my life. I'm leaping.
It's a great look. I love that. And then if you could change something about how culture views poetry today, what would it be?
Um, Well, I think there's two things I would change. It would be that people, when they feel they have to get the poem, like, I don't get it, I don't get it. And like, there's so many songs I listen to that I just enjoy that I don't quite get. And just the misconception that if you read a poem and you don't like it, you don't like poetry. It would be like me turning on the radio and like, hearing a country song and being like, well, I guess I don't like music. I just I don't I think that's just such a strange thing. I feel like, there's so many different poets out there for everyone. You just, you find your people and you find your poems. So I think the misconception that, oh, I don't like poetry. It just is like the whole genre, it's just putting it all down. And I do think that, especially the way everyone's writing something different, there's got to be someone out there for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then yeah, just opening up, the conversation a little bit more, but I see that in a political realm a little bit where people get frustrated with only what they see and don't have a historical context for like, well, there are other options,
Right.
and the same thing with poetry is that like there aren't just the options you got in high school and college, there's like a world. And there are worlds within worlds and times and everything like that, and um doing better in our educational systems of showing more representation, everything like that, I think would bring more people to it. So
Yeah, and well, now the way it's being taught, which is, I love the way high school teachers are teaching it now. It's called teach #teach living poets. And so they teach, I've like zoomed into some schools like in Wisconsin and that, um, because they're teaching poets that are alive. And I know when I was in high school, every poet I read was dead. I mean, I remember going to the UW and finding out like my teacher, Linda Beards, was a poet. And I'm like, wait, they exist now? They're walking around us. I didn't realize like they were living poets. So I was learning, oh, and then you would learn from Shakespeare and you start writing like Dost Thou, that you're writing in that kind of strange Shakespearean voice. And so you're also writing terribly. And then you realize, oh, I can write in my voice and my lingo and my world. I can include a smartphone in my poem if I wanted, or a shoe, or a skunk.
Absolutely. And I actually I hadn't heard of that hashtag, and I love that because you will see the legitimate question like, oh, do people still write poetry? It's heartbreaking to hear, but like whoever came up with that hashtag and is spearheading that program, like they're my favorite people.
They're my favorite people too. And now it's not, I remember in the early 2000s, it was always kind of cringy to tell someone you were a poet because it just got you like a weird look. Like, oh, like now where do we go with that? And now I tell people I'm a poet and they'll say something like, oh, well, I like to write poetry or I read Mary Oliver, so I like that it's expanding. That kind of goes back to that other question about non-poets like reading poetry.
100%.
Mhm.
Just absolutely love that. Thank you so much. And then now moving on to the word association here.
Oh no, this is the part that makes me nervous.
Good, good.
Like the invasive thoughts, like I'll
Can't wait, can't wait.
try my best.
You're gonna do great. All right. Publishing.
Golden.
Yeah. Calendar.
Deadlines.
Swan.
Double.
Workshop.
Purgatory.
Politics.
Awful.
Eraser.
Eraser. Pencil.
Genre.
What was that?
Genre.
Email.
Selfish.
Villanelle.
Rook.
Ireland.
And hope.
Possible.
Beautiful. I love that.
Some
Very cool. You did great.
of those might not make sense to people, but there's a castle in Ireland that looks like a rook. So I was going from that one on top of the cliffs of Moher.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I chose it because of, Queen Me, but taking it in that direction, like that's one fun thing that I find with the associations is like you never know where they're gonna go. And like people
Right.
have asked me, so some people have flipped the table on me, and I don't know what I'm gonna say too. So it's fun.
Yeah, those I did not know. I didn't watch all of JD's because I was afraid I wouldn't hear the words and want to do it, but it's nice to know that they're different every time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then shout out JD Isa for connecting us.
Yeah.
He's an amazing guy. Well, cool. And then so moving on here, so a remarkable line that you came across recently or has stayed with you that you would like to share.
Okay, I'm going to share a line from my dear friend Martha Solano, who left us in on May 5th. And the line, this is from Pedestal magazine, and she was writing towards the end of her life, like probably her best poems. It really showed, when know she passed away from ALS for anyone who doesn't know, and knew she had a terminal illness. So she knew she had anywhere from a year to 18 months, possibly a little longer. But that her poems towards the end, because her body was fading, but her brain, she was always Marty. And this was the poem this was a couple lines from that poem Poetry, which is in Pedestal magazine if anyone wants to Google it. Cultivate the unexpected like cultivating plums. Become the uncommon prune of the ages. Be the antidote and the anecdote. Especially in the morning, listen to pigeons and scientists. Unrigid your flagpole. So she is just her wordplay and her images have always just amazed me. So she has a new book, Terminal Surreal, coming out on her birthday. which is September 2nd.
Absolutely amazing. Very, very moving because yeah, so I'll share. I've fundraised for the ALS Association Orange County chapter before. Yeah, I you know, lost a friend to ALS. So and yes, like what there's different strands of it, of course. There's the different types, but just you're very correct in saying the mind stays alive, but the body deteriorates. So um anybody writing that is astonishing, like that poem. But the fact that she had that presence and that interior pressure to turn in a golden game like that is really astonishing. And someone was writing for her, if you know how she.
Well, she had, well, in the beginning, she was able to use text for a while, and then they had the text where you can use your eyes. That she was like an early person for that. Um, but that was one thing that she did was as long as she could, she wrote through the disease.
Amazing, amazing. What a gift. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful. And when is that book being released?
It's on her birthday, September 2nd, from, and I don't remember who it's from, but it's Terminal Surreal. It's a great title, and I've already read the book, and it's amazing poems, all about her ALS journey. And also, I mean, she's an environmentalist and a birder, so there's always something good in a Marty Solano poem.
My new favorite poet. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, great. And then, so moving from there, wondering about, your recent work, like what has your focus, what's coming out from you very soon.
My book just went into production, Accidental Devotions. My newest book is Dialogues with Rising Tides, which like if somebody wants like a sampler and kind of what's in conversation with my next book, it's a good, you know, little buffet of my poems. But Accidental Devotion is going to come out in spring, and we just started talking about cover art. I have edits due. Um, Spring 2026, but it's full of ghosts and God and Dickinson and desire and technology. Yeah, there's a lot.
I wouldn't expect less. That sounds amazing. Yeah, we'll share out all the links here. But Kelly, an absolute pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much for your time and energy. It means a lot.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm glad we all connected.
Outstanding. Talk to you.